Whenever you're like, hey, I'm going to do my first album in 15 years, I know, let's do a 2-hour rock opera epic that can transition to stage. That's an undertaking that's a lot bigger than what I initially intended.
Welcome back to Cultivating Truth. My name is Aaron Davis, and this is a podcast where faith and culture collide. I often get asked, why art? Well, art is the expression for humanity in which mere words are simply not enough. It is an ability to have creative skill that can be applied or expressed through our imagination through different mediums. It's a communication tool. Well, today I have the privilege of interviewing a great artist who I'm sure is not on your bingo card for this year, as he has composed, written, and made a rock opera for musical theater all about the life of Christ. Cultivating Truth is excited to welcome Craig Evans onto our podcast today, which Craig is a composer and musician known for his unique, dynamic fusion of rock and musical theater. Who would have thought that the two could combine? He is a composer of the rock opera, What I Came Here For, brand new. The second part just released, and we still have 2 parts to go. Craig has been working in the music world for over 30 years, working on different films and documentaries. As a believer, he wishes to tell this story of what I came here for through the eyes of Jesus, but specifically through the humanity of Jesus. So Craig, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell me about this project that you've been working on.
So this is a big musical rock opera designed for maybe to listen to as an album, maybe to see on stage, but it's called What I Came Here For. It is the story of Jesus, but told from a narrative of Jesus' inner monologue and what he's thinking and what he's feeling as he's going through things. It's a big endeavor that I've been working on for 5+ years, and I've been working with a lot of great people. It's been a really fun project.
Yeah, so part 2 just came out, and so obviously part 1 came out earlier this year, but this is 4 parts, right? This is going to be going on for the next few months, is that right?
That's correct. So each part is roughly about 25 minutes to a half hour long. It explores a different aspect of Jesus's life, but it's going to be going on, like the first piece dropped in January, second piece dropped in February, March and April. The idea is that it leads up to Easter Sunday is what we're trying to target and what we're trying to aim for as far as that last release. It would be something that kind of goes hand in hand to see the death and resurrection of Jesus actually on the day that we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. Yeah.
Well, I loved and very much enjoyed going through the entire album. I think
you're one of the few people who have heard the whole thing, and so feel nice and privileged there, Aaron.
Well, I think the description of your style of music, even, I think it fits it. There's almost like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra, this epic nature of the most epic event in human history. And I think that you bring that to the table. Tell me a little bit about your style of music and what led you to kind of go this route versus, contemporary Christian music.
I am someone who, again, I appreciate contemporary Christian music and I appreciate pop music, and I get that. I tend to be, just in nature, like who I am, a kind of, aggressive sounds weird, but I enjoy music that moves, like something that's aggressive is the word. But I like my loud guitars. I like drums that actually make you feel something all through your body. And so I feel like this was more in kin to the disruption that something as powerful and as seismic as Jesus coming to earth. I feel like that shook the earth. So why not do music that would shake the earth too?
I love it. I can imagine, as you said, you've been working on this for 5 years. I mean, this is quite the endeavor because this is your baby, right? I mean, you work
Yes.
for people, but you wrote it, you composed it.
Well, what's really funny is as I'm going through the writing process, and again, whenever you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna do my first album in 15 years," I know. Let's do a 2-hour rock opera epic that can transition to stage. That's an undertaking that's a lot bigger than what I initially intended. And so, as I'm going through and writing certain pieces of it, um, I started drawing on like things that I wrote when I was 14, like instrumental pieces that I had written. I was a weird, nerdy kid that sat at home on a Friday night and composed music. And so I took some of those things that I wrote way back then, and those musical elements show up very strongly in this piece. Because whenever you're trying to write 2 hours worth of music and still have callbacks to things, but still make new things interesting, it takes a lot of writing. It took a lot of composing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that process. What was your, what was, I guess, an everyday, life like? You're working, you're taking care of your family, and then, I mean, are you staying up all night? What's that look like for you?
Usually whenever it comes to music in general, I will get an idea, and it will be like that little seed kernel in your head, and then it starts just kind of growing, and you're like, I've got to figure out a way to make sure that I don't lose this thing that I just thought. And so if you looked at my cell phone, there are videos of me driving in the car. I hit the record button and I just sing like a streaming consciousness of things, some of which were terrible ideas. But some of those you can, like, if I listened to them now, I would be able to go, that's where I got this from. And this is where I got this from. And so whenever you're actually putting something like that together, the brainstorming, there are no bad ideas. Well, I've got proof on my phone that there are plenty of bad ideas, but you have to keep doing those bad ideas over and over and over until you get the one that actually works for the project that you're doing. So that's what the process was like. But again, there's inspiration, there's themes, there's a lot to it, and I put my heart and soul into it all.
So, Craig, as one who loves musical theater, I'm sure you're familiar with some of the most famous rock operas out there who have attempted to tell the story of Christ before, not necessarily with the most Christian heart. The ones that come to my mind, Andrew Lloyd Webber's Jesus Christ Superstar, Stephen Schwartz, who's, big right now again with Wicked out in movies. He did Godspell way back when. How does this project differ from those who have attempted to tell the story of Christ before through musical theater?
Well, first of all, there is value in Jesus Christ Superstar. Like you do, it's not just there are things that people found offensive, but they're missing what the point was with Jesus Christ Superstar, and same with Godspell. If you found, Jesus telling parables, it's cute, it's fun. So there were value in those. There was also a Christian one that was produced. I'm thinking it was like Pete Stewart did something called Hero, which was a Christian rock opera about Jesus that had like Michael Tate and John Cooper from Skillet, which had a really cool idea. But what this one is doing that's a little bit different than all of those is it's focusing on the fact that that Jesus was human, and that all the things that he was thinking and all the things that he was feeling were very human emotions, and he was living a very human life in that regard. And so it makes things a little more relatable, because I, in fact, am human as well. And so I could relate to what Jesus was feeling. And then there's this idea that if me and Jesus were to switch places, would I have responded the way that he ultimately responded? It's a thought exercise. You get to say, if I were in Jesus's shoes, would I have been able to be as good and holy as he ultimately his actions were? Because his thoughts, his feelings, his emotions may not have always been with the best interests of everyone, but the actions that he actually took were. And that's very much like me, in the sense of there are times whenever in my head I want to react this one way, but instead what I choose to do is to do the right thing. And so it kind of gives a little perspective into that. Like, imagine if Jesus was driving a car and someone cuts him off. Did Jesus have that thought of, man, that dude just cut me off, I am angry at him? Or was he just the guy that was like, you know what? He was in a hurry. It's all good. Because that's what I choose to do in that moment, but that's not what I feel at first. And so this album does kind of explore that human aspect of things, of how Jesus may have been feeling. Again, we don't know for sure. We know that he loved us, and ultimately he dies for us. But even that, maybe there was a process there. I don't know. And so it just kind of explores, again, that human element to things.
But you want to tackle something that we do know, and that is that Christ walked with us and he was like us. And
Right.
The Bible does support Jesus had emotions. You know, I always thought that the story of Lazarus was interesting to me. And I think it really does go deeper on Jesus's humanity, because you would think as God himself, he'd be like, yeah, he's dead. Like, it's all good. You know, he's with me. But it says he wept. It says that he mourned. He was there. He went to the funeral, you know, and then had enough, passion and drive to bring him back from the dead to, represent also what he's here to do, what he came here for. So I do think that it's interesting to tackle that. And I hear you on, we don't always factually know. And I think that it's important to state those things, because critics will hear this and they'll immediately say, oh, we don't know. The Chosen has gotten that criticism. Well, we don't know that, he would have danced at this party. No, but it's very likely like he would have. Like, why wouldn't he?
So.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Wouldn't you like to see a Jesus dance? I would like to see what Jesus looked. I mean, and I know that we can't see that, but man, I want to know if people were so attracted to Jesus. If he had crowds that followed him every time he spoke, in the same way. There were human aspects to Jesus that I mean, I'm just imagining now for a second. Imagine if Jesus was unlikable.
Yeah.
That wouldn't work. It wouldn't have worked. Like God's plan hinging on the personality of Jesus. I mean, it just wouldn't have worked.
Well, and now that I'm thinking about it, it's, the Jesus that's found in Godspell and Jesus Christ Superstar, they do approach a little bit more of that passive, a little bit on the weaker side representation, whereas the Jesus that you're wanting to show, and I think that's appropriate language, because you're not capturing everything, you're not going into the cosmic realm or anything like that, but you're wanting to showcase what might he be thinking in these pivotal moments that we find in the Bible. And he's a man. He's a man with emotions and thoughts. I think that that's very interesting, and I think it's very important for us to try to understand the humanity of Christ. What was your inspiration leading to this? Why tell a story like this?
I feel like it's a story that kind of needed to be told, and not just for church folks, but for people outside of the church. And I'll give an example. I worked very, very closely for all these years with Joseph Taylor, who is the producer, and he's also the guitarist, and he even sings. He plays the character of Satan whenever he's tempting Christ. Joe's not a Christian. He heard one of the songs that I was working on, and he listened and heard kind of the human aspect of Jesus, like Jesus actually struggling like we struggle. And he made a comment, and that comment was, that's the type of Jesus that I would serve. And he said that sort of as a joke, but sort of from a real aspect of his life, because he had grown up in the church, and the church that he had grown up in, people were not, they were fake. They weren't nice. They treated him and his wife poorly. And so that's what kind of threw him outside of Christianity. And so him hearing that song for the first time, he goes, well, that sounds like a real Jesus. That's why I kept doing this, is because there's a story that needs to be told. And that's why I did it.
With that kind of passion that was stirring up into you, what led you to begin to take on a whole rock opera? I mean, did you just wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to write, 4 sides of this epic of
Yeah.
Jesus?
So this is actually the first album that I had worked on since my kids were born. I remember I had my studio in our little house, and it was a little house. And Malachi, we were going to bring home this baby, and I was like, I either have to have a studio or a nursery. And so I packed up all the recording equipment, and that was, I hadn't worked on an album for about 15 years or so. Who in their right mind says, okay, let me now take on this 2-hour long rock opera epic with all new original stuff. It was a big undertaking. But it all started with me thinking through, like, I wanted to write a Christmas song, and I ended up writing a modern style Christmas song. And then I was like, you know what? I want to write an Easter song. And so I wrote this really hard rock Easter song. And then from there, it was like, I am unknowingly making the story of Jesus here. So I just ran with it. Yeah. So that's how it started. That's why an epic. I don't really know. It's because that's what I have. That's what I am. I am hard rock metal music tied to musical theater, which is a blend like no other, like jazz hands and air guitar. It's just what I am.
Yeah. So with that being said, who do you think would be most appealed to this? Obviously, Christians would probably be interested in. It sounds like rock lovers. But give me some other bands or groups. If you like this person, then you might be interested in this.
From the Christian standpoint, if you're a fan of like your heavier Christian rock bands, your Skillets, even your PODs, bands like that, you'll dig this. From a secular standpoint, if you like the big theatrical rock bands of like your Queen, even like an Alice Cooper, like you might enjoy it like that. We on Spotify, we got grouped into a playlist of like-minded artists, and there's a band named Dream Theater, which I had never heard of before. And then I go listen, and it's like, oh yeah. But for people who would like this, it's really funny who the audience ended up being. whenever this got presented to various Christian outlets, they were like, "We love this. We can't use this because it's too heavy."
Mm.
And I was like, "Yeah, I get it. I knew that was likely." But yet we're being played on 23, 24 different modern rock stations right now, and not Christian affiliated, just rock music. And so we're getting that kind of acceptance there. But then the funniest piece is the musical theater nerds out there, the ones that were in the musical theater show choir type of high school setups. Those little nerds are the ones that really have taken a hold of this thing. And the first part is doing really well on Spotify, and it's probably more towards the musical theater folks listening than your CCM Christian contemporary folks. But whenever I say it's hard rock music, it's not that heavy. If you ever talk to someone who really likes their metal,
Right.
man, they like their metal.
Yeah.
And this is not that. But it again, I feel like it's a balance. So that's who I think is the ones that would be most interested in it.
I agree with you. I don't think it's too rock or too metal, but I can understand, especially knowing the CCM world and, those channels, they have an audience and a demographic that this might not appeal to, which, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know how often I even hear, your Skillets and whatnot on them, and they're headlining Winter Jam. They're known as some of the biggest artists in the Christian contemporary space. So I think it's cool that you have this platform now that you're interacting with just the secular rock artists. And if they begin listening to the words, it's all about the gospel, which I think is really cool. So what about your backstory do we need to know to have a better understanding of this project and maybe what's, kind of behind the DNA of this project?
Sure. I grew up in the church. Every Sunday, every Wednesday, probably every Tuesday for choir practice. And then don't forget church basketball on Saturday. We were there all of the time. And the church, and even though I'm going to say things that sound like I'm being negative, I'm not. I am so thankful for the church that I grew up in. But I was taught lots of things. And then whenever I got older and I started opening up the Bible for myself and I started reading and studying for myself and I really started to engage with the Word of God, I found out that some of those ideas and some of those teachings weren't necessarily, it's not that they weren't accurate, but they weren't the whole story. You'll see that I'm kind of unpacking some of those things from my childhood while we talk about things like the idea of why Jesus died on the cross. As a kid, you're taught, oh, he died for your sins. What does him dying on a cross have to do with my sins? So that's some of the things that we unpack in this project, and that's things that really struck me whenever I became that young adult. And now as I am an old adult, but that's part of, you kind of see my journey through faith alongside with this project.
Wow. Well, I love that. I think that that's what makes, these types of projects special, because we all have our journey. We all have the things that we're wrestling with, and we're all trying to properly understand this man, Jesus, who completely changed the world. So we're in the middle now of the album fully coming out. When it's all said and done, where do you want to see this project go?
I can't tell you how many times distributors, producers have asked me that same question, like, what do you want to do with this? And my answer has always been the same, which is I want to put it on vinyl and then I want to hold it. And that's it for me personally, just to say that I did it. I feel like there's a lot of things in our lives where we want to do something and then we just don't get it done. And I wanted to make sure that I got this thing done, and I wanted to make sure that I did that for me. And so all of this has been something that I wanted to do because like I really felt like it was a responsibility or a calling that I had and to complete this thing. But what do I want for it? I don't really know. And let's go back to Jesus Christ Superstar for a second. That thing started as a concept, and it was like a 2 or 3 song project of sorts, and then it had its own morphine until it became a stage show. If this ended up on stage, I would watch it. Do I want to do it? No. Do I want to sing it? I can't. It's really weird. I played Jesus in this rock opera. However, I'm too old to play Jesus. I am 10 years past Jesus. And so, as far as what someone else wants to do with this, sure, I would encourage that. If someone wanted to come and partner and say, "Hey, we would like to do this as a stage show," awesome, go for it. And I would encourage and I would help. If this became some kind of like a music video of sorts, man, that would be super cool. And so I don't have any like end goal plans for this, but that's how I feel like most good art is. Like, how many times did someone start something and not really fully appreciate what they had started in the moment? And so maybe this is one of those things, or maybe it's nothing. Maybe it is just something that an album I hang on my wall. But here's what I do know is we put this out there. We've got part 1 and 2 out, and we're getting a lot more traction than what a normal Christian indie musical theater independent thing would get.
All the other guys, what they're normally doing.
Again, the backing of this project, it's 2 guys sitting in a room recording for 5 years, bringing in all of their friends and sometimes family, and just to be extra voices. There was a moment where we're recording call it a song, call it a scene, and we needed some background people like yelling and singing, like being like a mob. And so we called in Joe Taylor's family to come in, stand around a microphone, and be those characters. And so regardless of what this ends up becoming or who listens or what it's for, I can tell you that it was a great experience, and it was a great endeavor. And so what it becomes, I don't know. That's up to God.
Yeah. So you'd love to hold it one day. Hey, I would love to have a copy of that too. That'd be awesome. So if you get on vinyl, definitely let me know. But it sounds like just going through this process has been rewarding.
Oh, it's been neat. Again, working through things that I believe and putting it into music has been awesome. Working on something with friends. I called in favors from all kinds of great singers. They've all come in and sang various parts. I even have my uncle, who was like an idol of mine growing up. But I think he's a good, 20 years older than me. But yeah, I even have him come in and sing. He plays the role of Simon Peter. And it's just it was an opportunity to make something that is uniquely me and uniquely Joe. And it's been an awesome experience.
I mean, I think that whole process, it sounds like it was a good time, and it was good for your family and good for you to connect with all of these other incredible local artists for you to make this project. And I'm sure great conversations were had, even, discussing the character of Christ and the story of what's going on. So as we're in closing, what do we need to know? What do we need to know about you? How can we stay up to date? This project, where can we find it? When the release dates, all the things.
So first, you can reach me on the social medias. It's Craig Evans Productions on Instagram. It's Craig Evans Music on Facebook. You can look up the project on Spotify. Again, we like Spotify because it gives us some good analytics to see who's listening, and it kind of helps us know what we can do better. So we'd encourage Spotify. You can look that up under Craig Evans. You can actually look it up as the cast of What I Came Here For, because again, these are cast albums. And so part 1 and part 2 are already out. Part 3 comes out the end of March, and part 4 comes out Good Friday, which April 17th, I think, maybe. I made up a number there. Maybe that will be the right one. But yeah. And follow us on Spotify, stream it one time. You asked me before, how do I go about listening to this? Of course, I recommend starting at the opening overture in part 1 and listen through part 1 and then start on part 2. And if part 3 is out, just continue right on. Think of it, did you listen to the Hamilton soundtrack when it came out?
We listened to it on repeat, but yes.
So it's kind of that same thing. If you get the whole story, when you listen, just like with the Hamilton soundtrack, is you get to hear the whole story. You get to hear the whole story here too. And I can't tell you how many times people have listened and went, man, I could see it happening, which is the highest praise that we could receive for an album like this, is because we have an idea of what we think is what this all looks like and what it shows. But to hear that someone else also sees it in their brain, and someone else may have a different look of what this actually is. But everyone pictures it as something that it's audio, but it's forcing your brain to see it.
Yeah. I mean, and if someone's not familiar with, a rock opera or musical theater albums, I mean, these are meant to be listened together. They blend in with one another. Each song goes into the next one, and you did that nicely. I love looking at stuff like that and thinking, okay, that was a smooth, transition into the next song.
Each side is one song. Like, there is no stop, there is no break. We had to reformat a couple of things to make singles for radio. Because there is no start, there is no stop. It just continuously flows. And so each side is done that way. Whenever you start it, it'll flow.
If you're not familiar with the musical theater world, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, Pink Floyd love doing stuff like that. The Who had a couple of albums like that as well.
Right.
Well, Craig, we'll be on the lookout for part 3 and part 4. As you just said, part 2 just came out, so anyone listening should go check it out. Listen to the songs. Let us know your feedback. Attached to this video, we'll be sure to put out all the links to be able to find Craig Evans and What I Came Here For. And Craig, I appreciate you just letting us know what's going on, and hopefully we can do this again soon. Maybe when the whole project is done and we can talk about the process and what it's like. I'm sure others would like to hear, what is it like to make a rock musical theater opera? It's not many people can say that they're tackling what you are doing, especially on the Christian side of things. Good work, and I'm hoping for great success on your venture. Sorry.
Hey, Aaron, thank you very much for having me.
What am I gonna do? This is so insane. If God is in this, why the world He chosen me? What do I have to lose? What do I have to gain? This ordinary life, He'll set me free.
So be sure to check out this unique project called What I Came Here For, a rock opera for those who love rock and musical theater, and of course, want to hear an amazing story through the eyes of Jesus and through his humanity. Go give Craig Evans a follow, listen to his stuff, letting him know that you're liking his material and his music, and that you're looking out for his next projects coming out in March and April to conclude the story of What I Came Here For. I want to say thank you for supporting Cultivating Truth Podcast. If you would like to donate to the Cultivating Truth Podcast, you can do so by going to alethealegacy.com and clicking the donate tab. We would love to continue to support to bring on additional guests and be able to have the resources to be able to provide these guests with a great experience into getting this content out to you, the listener. You can also just support the ministry of Aletheia Legacy as we are equipping and discipling the next generation of Christian creatives. And we want you guys to know of stories and projects like Craig's and be able to inspire you to create beauty, engage culture, and inspire the world. Thank you for listening. Please be sure to give this a like and share, and we'll see you next time. Blessings.